right. Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here and participating in this third session of the summer series. As Melissa said, my name is Elena Kendrick, and I'm a career coach here in the Office of Career Success. And today we're going to be talking all about, fall accounting recruiting and how to build a strong resume that helps you stand out in a very competitive market. And my goal for today's workshop is to just make sure you walk away feeling a little bit more confident and better prepared and clear on kind of what to expect as you navigate the recruiting journey. So as Melissa kind of just went over, we have kind of already kicked off this fast track to a public accounting internship series. And to recap, the first two sessions were presented by our wonderful faculty career champions, Sean Wandry and Kathy Lowry. And these sessions focused on public accounting essentials and information about our semester in the profession program. So if you were unable to attend those events, they were recorded and they are uploaded on iConnect. So I highly encourage you to go give those two a watch. And then obviously after today's workshop, we'll have two remaining sessions on networking and interviewing. So today we're going to be talking about public accounting, of course, and the different career paths and services within them, different accounting firms that you'll be engaging with and encountering this fall. We'll spend a lot of time talking about recruiting for the fall, what to expect, how to prepare, how to kind of show up for different events. And then we'll jump into our resume workshop where we will talk about the Eisenberg branded resume, how to really begin writing impactful bullet points. We have to talk about AI and applicant tracking systems and how that plays a very critical role in how your applications will be assessed and analyzed. And at the end, we'll just kind of wrap it up with some best practices. And I'm hoping to have some time at the end for a couple of questions. Okay, so as I said in the first session, we did learn all about the differences between, public accounting versus private accounting, audit versus tax, and a little bit about the CPA licensure. But to kind of simply define public accounting once again, it involves providing financial services to a variety of different clients. And it's often what people think of when they hear the word CPA or the Big Four. And so these are some of those key services in public accounting that most of our students will kind of gravitate towards. So we have, of course, audit and assurance, tax services, advisory or consulting. But these firms, there's a lot more to them too. Like a lot of them provide risk management services, technology services, forensic accounting. They assist with like mergers and acquisitions. So the opportunities are really limitless. And I encourage you to kind of start figuring out which one you might be most interested in. And so on that topic, I recognize that a lot of you here today may not have even really taken many accounting courses yet, or an audit or a tax course. And so it's normal and it's expected if you're not exactly sure what you want to do with your career yet in accounting, or even like what types of firms best suit you. So that's okay. With that said, now is a really good time to start learning and to start researching. So you as the student are obviously responsible for initiating that process, and you've already done so by being here today. But again, you'll be responsible for diving in, for doing that work and that research. But your career team here in the OCS, we're here to really help you with the process. We want to help you reflect on how your interests and your skills align with different career paths, give you some ideas on how to connect with professionals, or really understand how to market yourself as an ideal candidate. And so the sooner that you can start to narrow down, which paths you're most interested in, then the less complex the like choosing what types of internships you want to apply to will be. So let's talk a bit about the different types of firms that you will be, recruiting with and encountering this fall. Many of you are probably most familiar with the Big Four. So that would include Deloitte, EY, KPMG, and PwC. And so the Big Four refers to the four largest accounting and professional services firms in the world. And so they have offices all across the country in most major cities. They also have a very large global presence, and their clients consist of Fortune 500 companies. And then right below them are the like mid-tier firms. So those are nationally recognized and also rank right below the big four in size and revenue. So that would include like RSM, BDO, Grant Thornton. And they mostly, like, while they work with some, of course, large companies, they really serve like middle market businesses. And so I would say the big four and these mid-tier firms, they probably have the strongest relationships with us here at Eisenberg. They have a long history of hiring our students, and they will be super active with attending and offering opportunities to connect with them this fall. But those aren't your only options. Regional firms are also incredible to explore. Regional firms have offices across like a specific geographical area. So New England, for example. So I've listed a couple here, but there's way too many to put on one slide. And so these regional firms, they again serve kind of mid-sized businesses, or they might have like a kind of niche industry specialization within the region. And then you have your small or kind of local CPA firms, which consist of maybe one or a few CPAs and support staff. And so they more so focus on providing like personalized attention and building strong, lasting relationships with the clients that they work with. And they could also specialize in certain industries. So going off of that conversation on kind of researching and digging into resources, I just wanted to highlight the accounting page on iConnect, and it's hyperlinked here. So once this is uploaded later on, you can go in and access these links. But this is a great way to kind of start to narrow down your interests. And I've highlighted some of my favorite accounting resources that kind of focus on career exploration and career pathways. So the reason this summer accounting series actually kind of came about is because the accounting firms are now recruiting students earlier than ever, and it happens faster than ever, and they still have very high expectations for our students. So we wanted to kind of break everything down for you. And before we can really talk about recruiting and timelines and internships, we do need to briefly talk about the CPA. And as we learned in those first two sessions, we know the CPA, it's obviously a professional certification. It's globally recognized as a standard of excellence in accounting. It helps to build, trust and credibility with the clients you'll work with. So from the recruiter's perspective, they want to bring future CPAs into their organizations. And so this will be a conversation that comes up when you are talking to them, when you're interviewing this fall, and you want to be prepared. So why does this sort of matter to you now or today? Well, we know that one part of getting your CPA is the educational requirement and includes a 150 credit kind of completion. And so that is soon going, there might be another pathway coming soon, but right now, as it is, the 150 still remains. And so it's important that you figure out your plan to getting that. And so normally there's kind of two traditional paths, whether it is getting the 150 in your 4 years at Eisenberg. Maybe you're coming in with some AP credits, or you're willing to take some courses in the summer or the winter. Many students work that out. Or, if you want to do the 120 like you would normally, and then add on like a master's degree or join the MSA program to get those additional 30 credits, that's also a really great option. So I definitely encourage you to kind of do some research on the 150, and then you can communicate and figure out that plan with your academic advisor in the fall, and just be ready to kind of answer that question when it comes up in recruiting. And we're going to actually look at later on when we get to resumes where you can highlight that in your resume. All right, so now onto a more fun topic, internships. Internships typically occur a year before that 150 completion date, and firms now recruit as early as 2 years in advance for those internships. So for you, that means that they will be targeting incoming sophomores this fall for summer and winter internships in 2027. And so applications for those internships will actually start to open as early as August, which is only in a few weeks, which is crazy. So you want to be prepared and just be sure you're frequently checking firm websites and Handshake for when those get released. You can even set like search alerts on Handshake so that you're notified when those come out. And I would obviously recommend that you have your materials kind of prepared and ready to submit so that you can be considered an early applicant. We've learned that some of these firms, they do give preference to early candidates, and it just makes the process go by a little bit more quickly for you. So with some of these dates, you might be wondering, okay, maybe I'll have an internship for 2027, but what should I be doing in between now and then? Like, what can I be doing next summer? And that's a great question. I do recommend you, meet with a career coach to kind of come up with some ideas or figure out that plan. But, I think doing any type of experiential learning will be super beneficial. So that could mean you do another internship next summer. That could be accounting related, it could be business related or not. As long as you're not doing an internship with a competing firm within the same year. So we do have an accounting agreement that you can read in more detail. It is on iConnect, and I've also linked it at the end of this presentation that talks more about that. But there's lots of opportunities. And so that could be, getting a part-time job, doing a summer job, or maybe doing some job shadowing, project work. There's so many ways that you can be building skills and adding things to your resume in the meantime. Okay, so when these internships do go live, one piece of advice is to avoid applying to every single internship you see at one firm. Employers, they do want targeted applicants who kind of know what they're looking for. And so if you apply to every role, that can sometimes show that you might be confused or signal like a lack of clarity. And we know that these applications, they all go to one centralized system. And so the recruiters, the hiring managers, they can see if you've applied to multiple positions. So some of the firms, they do have like guidance or policies on their websites you can read that will kind of let you know how many you should be aiming to apply to. The pipeline for hiring sort of looks like this. So obviously this fall, you'll be recruiting and interviewing for internship opportunities. You'll most likely be given an offer. Once you accept that offer, you will then, do that internship in 2027. And if all goes well and it's a good fit, most likely you do get a full-time return offer to work for that firm once you've met the 150 requirement. And so that junior year internship is the most common pathway that I've seen to a full-time offer, but it's not the only pathway. So you can still be considered for full-time opportunities with the Big Four, even if you don't complete an internship with them. So if for some reason you don't get selected for like a Big Four internship this fall recruiting season, please do not panic. It happened, it's normal. And we encourage you to meet with a coach and just kind of plan out your next steps. That could mean maybe exploring the regional firms or a smaller firm or looking at corporate accounting opportunities in the meantime. But there will be other recruiting seasons where you can apply for those full-time opportunities with the Big Four. Okay, so on our next slide, we're going to be looking at some key dates and events for the fall. I do want to just say that recruiting, it kicks off very early, pretty much immediately upon return to the fall semester. And I know that can be sometimes an overwhelming time for students, like you're coming back to campus, you're getting used to the environment, you're figuring out your schedule, and it's a lot on your plate. But I don't want any of you to miss these opportunities. So I definitely suggest you just kind of jot them down and you'll get more information about all of them very soon. So the first kind of kickoff event will be on September 9th, and this event is hosted by Beta Alpha Psi, and it's kind of this annual public accounting firm panel that they put on, which is very informative. The recruiters will come from the Big Four as well as RSM, Grant Thornton, and BDO, and they will talk to students about their companies, about recruiting, about opportunities. And it's just really a nice event to attend, especially if you're still exploring or learning. The following day, on the 10th, the firms will be returning to campus for the accounting firm barbecue. So this event is really fun. It's a networking opportunity. It is informal, it's casual. You can stop by their tables to ask questions. And what I love about it is it's not just recruiters there. There's usually alumni, there are staff members they bring, sometimes partners. And so those are people you'll actually be working with potentially, and they are doing the types of roles you would be doing in audit or tax or whatever it may be. So they're really awesome resources to learn from and kind of hear about their experience and what they like, what their growth pathway has kind of looked like. We'll also have some get to know the firm meetings throughout the month of September. So those are kind of one-on-one opportunities for you to sit down with the recruiters, again, ask questions, let them get to know you. You may have already, applied or interviewed at that point, but still a good idea to kind of, get more information from them. And lastly is the Eisenberg Career Days. So our Eisenberg Career Fair, it's held at the end of September, and day one of the fair will be September 29th, and that will be the day that all of the accounting firms will be present. And so that will include these big firms, but also a lot of regional firms that want to connect with our students. And again, like while this is late in September and you might have already gone through interviews or kind of waiting on an offer, it's important to note that attending as many events as possible and having multiple touch points with the recruiters is never a bad idea. And they actually prefer it. They want to get to know you. And, if you're thinking about it, when that recruiter is reviewing your application, you really want them to be like able to kind of match you to the name on your resume and think like, oh, okay, Elena, she attended 3 of our events and she's been really active and engaged. And this does actually help and to increase your kind of chances of moving forward in the process, especially when they're reviewing hundreds of applications. So as I said, you'll be getting much more information on this in your email, so be sure to monitor that, but you can also check out the iConnect calendar as these dates get closer for more information. Okay, so how are we going to prepare for fall recruiting? First and foremost, very important that we research the firms and those internships we're interested in. So I would start by going to the firm's websites, figuring out who they are, what they do, what's their mission. If you can find some employee reviews or testimonials, I feel like that always is helpful to understand sort of the environment there, the culture. Do some researching on what kind of skills they're looking for in students and in different candidates. You can think about like, what are these firms offering? Like, what do they provide in terms of CPA support, or what industries do they specialize in? What does career progression look like within these companies? And so, like I said, their websites are great, but also using Handshake, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, as well as just networking this fall at these events and reaching out to people will be really kind of insightful for you. Next, we want to prepare our application materials. So we're going to be covering resumes today, but it's important you update and align your resume, your cover letter, Handshake, and LinkedIn profiles for the positions you're interested in. So again, your career coaches, they are available all summer for virtual appointments to review those materials with you. So once you've kind of made those updates accordingly, I recommend getting someone to look at it. Next, elevator pitch and interview readiness. Again, we'll be touching on those much more deeply in our next few sessions, but this is all about like, how are you going to present yourself when connecting with professionals? How are you going to stand out? You don't want to wait until sort of that first interaction to really practice or test your elevator pitch, because recruiters, they notice that, and you really only get one chance to make a good first impression. And then interview readiness, of course, like how do we build strong interview stories and responses? So a lot more to come there. Relationship building, as we've already kind of been talking about, we want to establish connections with recruiters, and simply taking the time to like show up to these events. It's great, it's a good step, but it's not enough. You need to like know what you want to do with the time you'll have there, be intentional, have a plan and a goal. And then lastly, and arguably most important, demonstrating professionalism. So you want to be sure to do that in all of your communications and all of your follow-up. It will be a differentiator between you and other candidates. We've heard from recruiters over and over again, they're looking for students that are courteous, that are on time, that are respectful, that represent themselves in Eisenberg well. So that will be, again, essential. And on that topic, I do want to just quickly talk about offers. So you'll be interviewing around the same time for these different internships you're applying to. And so you'll get offers at different times. They're not all going to come in at once. So please don't feel pressured to accept the first offer you get immediately. I know it's exciting and I know you might think they want, a yes right away, but the recruiters and the employers, they actually want you to make the best decision for you. And so we want to make sure you're navigating that situation carefully, because the last thing we want is for a student to accept an offer, potentially get a different or a better offer, and then renege on that original offer just because, it does damage your professional reputation and could potentially damage the relationship we have as Eisenberg with these employers. And we don't want that to impact future recruiting opportunities for students. But of course, if you have any questions at any point, just reach out to the OCS and we are happy to help. Okay, so you might be wondering, like, how can I stand out if I've never really worked in a professional setting or I haven't really gotten that far in my accounting major yet? And so I think the key that a lot of these employers are looking for is, again, engagement and involvement. And that's really how you can showcase your skills and your interests. So getting involved in accounting clubs or any other Eisenberg clubs is great because not only does it give you insight into sort of the accounting industry and world, but there's always networking opportunities and it just is a really good resume builder. Same thing with experiential learning. So again, they're looking for well-rounded candidates. So it could be, maybe you're doing an on-campus job or volunteering, giving back to the community, participating in different activities or events, maybe club sports or intramurals. There's so many things that are offered to you here at Eisenberg and UMass. So definitely take advantage of it early. And lastly, some of you may have, in your first year here, encountered data camp or forage virtual job simulations. But if not, they're great opportunities to build your skills and your knowledge in your major. So specifically forage, they offer like task and project-based work simulations. They partner with some really big name companies like the Big Four, as you can see on this slide. And it's a low stakes way for you to kind of explore different service areas like audit or tax or advisory and identify what you might be interested in. And DataCamp, on the other hand, is a platform that helps you advance your AI and your tech skills in, things like Excel, SQL, Python, Tableau, and many other softwares. And AI skills are becoming more and more expected for different opportunities and companies. So that would be a great addition as well to your skill set. And the great thing about these opportunities is when you complete a data camp course or project or forage simulation, you get a little certificate, and that can actually be like highlighted on your LinkedIn profile. You can post about it. You can also add these experiences to your resume in either like a professional development section or a project section. And again, it just shows that you're going out of your way to develop these skills early on. Okay, so let's talk about resumes. I have linked here the Eisenberg Undergrad Resume Guide, and this is kind of your one-stop shop for any sort of guidance with your resume content, layout and formatting, how to write strong resume bullets. There is information on here about different educational circumstances. So if you're coming in as a transfer student or if you're planning to study abroad, like how that might show up on your resume. And then we have a ton of sample resumes that you can actually download, and they're organized by majors. Yeah, so we have a couple for accounting, and like I said, you can download them and they give you some good inspiration and ideas for what you might want to include on your own resume. All right, so we're going to look at sort of a sample and the template together. But before we dive into formatting and content, let's just talk about the function that your resume serves. Like, why do we even need a resume? Why is it important? So resumes reflect your understanding of course, the accounting industry, the company you're applying for, the role that you are interested in. And it is a way for you to showcase how your skills, your education, and your experience all prepare you to be successful in that role. And when we're putting our resume together, we want to think about the recruiter's perspective. They're the ones reviewing our resumes. So when we're positioning it, that's important to think about. And we know that recruiters really only scan your resume for like 7 seconds max. So they need to be able to really quickly identify you and visualize you in that role. So we want to make that process easy for them. We need to ensure that, we have consistent formatting, whether it's our font we're using, spacing, bullet sizing, the style throughout. And we need to eliminate any sort of errors, whether it's spelling, grammar, just any formatting mistakes, because those things reflect our attention to detail. And we don't want to make it easy for them to find something that's going to disqualify us or take us out of the running. The other thing that's great about the Eisenberg branded resume is it is pre-vetted and actually preferred by the Eisenberg recruiters. And it's also ATS friendly. So that means applicant tracking system friendly. We'll talk more about ATS systems and how they work and everything, but just know that when you submit a resume with this type of format, it won't be rejected based on any formatting issues. So what makes this formatting on this sample effective? So I'm noticing, again, the font is consistent, spacing is very organized. There's not a ton of white space, so that allows for visual appeal. It's one page, so your resume should always be one page, really, until you have 10 or more years of work experience. Um, and the content that makes it stand out is all of these different elements, the different sections you have. So, they have a professional heading, their education section, they're including the names, of course, of both Eisenberg and UMass. They have their degree in here, but if you have a concentration, if you are pursuing a certificate, if you have a focus area in your major, those can be included here. Any sort of academic accomplishments like your GPA, academic honors or awards or scholarships. And then you'll see highlighted here a line that does indicate the 150 completion date. So again, this just signals right away to the recruiters, you've already thought this through, you have a plan in mind, and they can ask you any follow-up questions that they need to. This particular resume does have like case experience on it. So this student has participated in case competitions. They wanted to highlight that. It makes them unique and stand out. So you can do something similar, if you have projects you want to highlight, again, professional development, it could be forage or a data camp experience. So lots of opportunity there to kind of make your resume a little bit different. And then, of course, work experience below. Work experience is, of course, very important part of your resume. And we'll talk about how to really make any sort of experience you've had transferable to what you want to do next. So all of these sections, including extracurricular experience, leadership experience, your skills, this really shows a well-rounded candidate. Okay. Here's another sample. And as you can see, again, professional contact information. You really only need your phone number and email and your LinkedIn URL. We really don't need to put our addresses on our resume anymore, especially for like privacy and security reasons. Your resumes will be kind of flowing in a lot of different places. So we want to make sure to protect that. This student put on in their education section some relevant courses they're taking, which you can absolutely do. It signals, the emerging skills and experience you're getting in accounting. So I recommend writing out the actual course titles rather than just putting in like the course numbers or that type of thing. Um, then when we're looking at the experience section, you'll notice these bullet points. They're action oriented, they focus on outcomes, they start with really strong action verbs, which we'll talk about next. They're providing context, and they kind of answer the question of, so what? Like, why is this important? What you were doing? What was the impact you made? They have again, activities or extracurricular section. And then the skills, your skills should focus on your technical skills. Um, you can also include proficiency levels. So if you feel like, I'm learning Excel, but I'm still pretty like introductory and I'm a beginner, like you should still put it on there and just specify that. You can put it in parentheses. Or on the other hand, if you're advanced or an expert, make sure to mention that. You can also highlight certifications or like Eisenberg badges you're getting down here. If you have other language skills, those can be highlighted. One thing to note about the skills section is you actually don't want to highlight any soft skills here. So things like communication, problem solving, attention to detail, those things are important, but we want to highlight them above in our experiences to kind of provide evidence of how we were demonstrating them. Okay, so writing impactful bullets. A common misconception is that your resume bullets are quick summaries of what you did at the job or, general job duties and tasks. But if you only do that, then you're missing an opportunity to really like sell yourself. So we want to transform those responsibilities into accomplishment statements that will highlight your skill and your impact. And again, when you're writing your bullets, you want to ask yourself, how did you provide value to that team or that organization or that company? And within those bullet points, we want to make sure to only include relevant details. And if we can quantify some of those details, that just brings it to another level. So the framework we use with students for building your resume bullets is called the WHO bullet framework. And that stands for what did you do, how did you do it, and what was the outcome? So what did you do? That focuses on the specific action or task you performed. How did you do it? What was your approach to completing that task? Were you leveraging certain skills? Did you have a process? What technology or software were you using? And then what was the outcome or result of your actions? Can you quantify those results or at the very least, like qualify them, like the effectiveness of your efforts? So here's an example. I'll read through it and you can kind of see based on the color coordination, the different elements of the WHO bullet framework. So prioritized excellent customer service while consulting with 50 customers per shift, resulting in improved customer experience and 25% repeat business with the company's loyalty program. So that's a pretty strong bullet, but just a disclaimer, that takes time to build. You won't have something like that come together perfectly on your first try. And that's kind of why your resume is always being developed. It's always a work in progress. This here is a resource we have on iConnect. And I really like to use it with students. You can print it out or just download it digitally to use. But the students I work with, they find it helpful to use like a separate tool to develop their bullets instead of writing or editing directly within their document, because this kind of breaks down the process into more manageable steps and you can kind of just focus on the content. And then later on, once you've developed some good work, you can just implement it and integrate it into your resume. So back to action verbs. Action verbs are what you're going to want to start your bullets with. And we want those to be meaningful. And I've listed a couple examples here, like analyzed, trained, spearheaded, resolved. We do have an action verb bank you can look through on the resume guide. So if you're ever working on it and you're like, I can't think of a word, or like, I know what I want to say, but I can't really figure out the verb I want to use, go to that action verb bank and I'm sure you can kind of find what you're seeking. We want to avoid verbs like responsible for or assisted or helped with. They're a little bit too vague and lack confidence, honestly, in your ability or in your potential. So we want you to kind of own your action verbs and highlight what you've actually accomplished. With these verbs, you want to use the present tense for any current positions you're actively still doing and the past tense for older positions. One exception, though, is if you are in a current role and there's an assignment you completed or an accomplishment you had that was like a one-time thing and it's done with, then you can use the past tense. So I've highlighted examples here, but let's say you achieved Employee of the Month for at some point, or you collaborated on a project with a 5-member team. If it's no longer ongoing, okay to use the past tense. Okay, so here's a sample resume entry for a tax intern position. And as you can see, this is a student that worked at Panera Bread. They were making sandwiches, and I've listed some of those bullet points here. So I want you to just take a second and look through them and think about like what's missing here, what could be improved. Feel free to throw ideas in the chat if you want to. I mean, I'll read through some of them: baked bread, sliced meats, prepped vegetables, cleaned the floor, interacted with new hires, rang out orders. So what I'm noticing here is that these bullets are not super relevant to accounting or to a tax internship. They're lacking some detail, and there's a lot of white space that we're not using on the page. So these bullets are a little bit short. So let's look on a way we could sort of revise these. So this is a revision that is a little bit more relevant. It's better because it is a little more specific. It's a bit more detailed. So things like fulfilling orders, collecting payments, balancing the cash drawer, all great things and transferable, but they're still not focusing on how those tasks were completed or really what outcomes were delivered. So lastly, here's a revision using the WHO framework, and this is definitely much better. These, you can see still that they do highlight the main responsibility, but it's more transferable. So you can see here, like they're putting in metrics and numbers of how many orders they were fulfilling, what type of environment it was, working with teams, driving sales, any sort of achievements like getting an award or a recognition. So this is kind of where you want to eventually get to. Here you can see the side-by-side of where we started and where we ended. And again, while both of these are true to what this student did in this role, the WHO bullets are more transferable, focusing on things like sales and training and leadership and teamwork. So we want to make sure that we're not just writing bullet points for what we did, but bullet points for that job that we want. All right, applicant tracking systems. So we know that employers are using ATS systems to scan resumes for relevant keywords. And they are doing that before your resume actually even gets to be reviewed by a person. So when they're scanning that resume, the system is producing a match rate based on how well your qualifications match the job description. And if that match rate ends up being too low, whatever the company sets that match rate at, your resume won't be moved forward and it will get rejected. So very important that we do customize our resume each and every time to the job. And another thing is with your formatting. I mean, we already talked about the Eisenberg sort of format, but we want to avoid any unreadable text like tables or photos or symbols that will not pass through the system and will automatically reject your resume. Okay, so we know recruiters are leveraging AI in their, candidate screening. How can we leverage it in our resume development, and should we? I do want to obviously empower you all to use it responsibly in your search efforts. We do not want to use AI to write our resumes because employers notice that. They've told us this. They're reviewing resumes all day and they can pick up on common ChatGPT language. But at the end of the day, you can still use AI to kind of help you in your efforts. So I've highlighted Microsoft Copilot here just because I know that you can log into that AI software with a UMass email. It's your data and your information is protected. So that's great. But you can use AI to generate keyword lists. So I put in a few prompts on this slide to help you do that for the job you're applying to. You'll want to copy and paste that job description into the prompt you're using and ask it to generate a list or compare it to your resume and ask for ways to align it better. Um, but what you want to keep in mind is once you get those keywords, you want to think about how you're going to put them into your resume. So we don't want to force them in or scatter them randomly. We want to make sure that it is natural and still accurately reflects your experience. All right, so some last best practices for resumes. Again, can't reiterate it enough, but really important that you customize your resume for each internship application. And again, I know that seems like, oh, that's going to take a lot of time and it's going to make my process slow and inefficient. But really, what you want to focus on is the quality of your applications over how many you're sending in. And you're going to get a better response that way. But once you do this sort of like keyword and customization process a few times, you get used to it and you can streamline it. And because you'll be applying to similar roles, you won't need to fully overhaul your resume. It's really just about making some minor, edits and tweaks here and there. Next, we want to make sure we focus on skills and impact, regardless of where we developed them. So again, don't put pressure on yourself. Like I didn't have a perfect experience or internship. That's okay. They're looking for candidates who have different, diverse backgrounds and experiences, and they're really focused on skills-based hiring now. Anytime that you develop new skills or complete projects in your academics, make sure to bring that into your resume and your profiles. You really want to make that kind of transition from the classroom to career. Also, you do not need to include references in your resume. You will provide those when they request them or separately within the application itself. And lastly, how do we want to name our resume? I recommend just including your first and last name and resume. If it's too long or if it's like Elena Kendrick resume, KPMG version 25, like that doesn't always land well or look professional. So we want to make it easy on the recruiter. All right, so here are some of those links to some of the resume and other materials on iConnect, as well as a QR code. You can access these later on, but I'm happy to take any questions if we do have any time left. I'll stop sharing. You can definitely come off mute or throw anything you need to in the chat as well.
Hi, my name is Pulkit. I'm gonna be a sophomore this year at UMass Amherst. I'm transferring from Northeastern.
Oh,
Now,
cool.
I have a question. I went to iConnect and I saw that a lot of Gen Zs and a lot of students use Handshake for looking for jobs and stuff. But I want to know, is that better than LinkedIn or should I start using Handshake now?
That's a great question. I really love both platforms. The only thing about Handshake that I would say makes it a preferable, platform is that the employers that are on there that are posting opportunities are specifically looking for UMass and Eisenberg students, whereas on LinkedIn you are competing with candidates from pretty much everywhere and people that have graduated or recently been laid off. So Handshake's definitely a go-to here at UMass and at Eisenberg. You can also like message employers and recruiters on there. There's events on there that you'll want to keep your eye out for. So yeah, I would definitely recommend if you're not familiar with it yet, that's okay. But this summer you can log in and kind of get used to how to use it and get an understanding of like what jobs are being posted and how to really analyze those job postings.
Yep, thank you so much. I have another question. So my question is that you said the job opportunities or internship opportunities are going to be available starting from the first week of September. Now, is that something that's going to come in email or do I need to check iConnect or look somewhere for applications?
That's a great question. We, I would recommend like checking the firm websites as well as Handshake. They will be on there as well. So you kind of want to make sure to monitor that. I don't know, Melissa or Noel, do we send out any like notifications to students when those get posted? Yes. Okay.
We do.
And
We will send out some email communications around events and application deadlines and things like that. But we still encourage students to be proactively checking Handshake and iConnect and the company websites as well to make sure that they're not missing anything.
Okay.
great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. One last question, please. So are the jobs and internships gonna be available from starting August or September?
So it used to be, I'm pretty sure it was September, but now it's getting earlier and not all the firms will post them on the same day. So I would say starting, close to the end of August, just kind of keep your eye on those websites on Handshake and their websites to kind of see if they have gone up yet or not.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. I don't know if we have any other questions. I know we're out of time, but if anyone has further questions or want to schedule a coaching appointment with any of the undergrad coaches, you're more than welcome to. And thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Elena, and thanks to everyone for participating. Yes, please feel free to visit iConnect and click on appointments if you'd like to make an appointment with a coach to discuss any of this further. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
You too.